The following is intended for mature audiences only. Discretion is advised.
Thank you so much for downloading this episode of So What Do You Really Do? The podcast where I, your host, Deader Dennis Mallard, talk to artists and entertainers about their day jobs. And the artist and entertainer whose day job we're talking about is James P. Connolly. J.P. Connolly, comedian friend in L.A. Wait for it. Pandemic friend. J.P. Connolly. He's a comedian I met through Zoom comedy. He is, this guy, I'm so glad I got that I finally had him on. I should have had him on there. JP was like just one of the nicest dudes. Still is. I mean, he didn't get less nice after the pandemic, but he was just a good dude to hang around with. Like, I miss pre-Zoom shows, hang out with certain people and just riffing and joking and having fun, and JP's one of them. And our friendship started about just hang out in the Zoom rooms, and he's, very polite and cordial and this, and then just me addressing him was like, "What's up, James? What's going on?" And bringing up things and talking about and just joking around, and could not be a nicer guy. And to know that he was a Marine and that he fought in Desert Storm. Sorry, not the second Iraq war, not the one in Afghanistan, that one. Early 1990, like Bush Sr.'s Iraq war, which blew my mind. Like, I knew he was a soldier. I knew he fought in a war, but I didn't think it was that one. I didn't think it was that long ago. But it was great having him on. And for those who are just joining us, thank you so much for being a part of this. If you're here because you wanted to find out what this podcast is about, or because one of my guests were on the podcast and you wanted to listen to them, thank you for being here. All that I ask, if you enjoyed this conversation, please leave a review. iTunes, Google, anywhere that you listen to this podcast, leave a review. You might not think it matters, but it does. It helps the algorithm. It doesn't help me. It helps my guests. It puts it in more and more people's ears around there when you put those, when you put these podcast recommendations down, when you subscribe, when you tell a friend, and when you leave a comment on your favorite place to listen to podcasts. So if you can do that, if you enjoyed the podcast, I would appreciate it. I already appreciate you being here. I hate to ask you for one more thing, but all it costs you is just a few minutes of your time. I'm going to give you as much entertainment as I can on here. In fact, James is going to be the one doing all the entertainment, not me. He is a great comedian, and he has wonderful stories of joining the Marines, figuring out how to do comedy for the first time, his journey into comedy, doing television, his first time doing television, and his journey to comedy is a series of wonderful stories. And I really feel honored that he was able to tell me all of those stories here. And I am glad that you guys are going to listen to it as well. So please put your hands together. Put your hands together? When have I ever said that in the podcast? If you're listening the first time, I've never told anybody to applaud on the podcast, but please, I would love it if you all enjoyed my conversation with Marine and comedian James P. Connolly.
During the pandemic, that poor kid was like locked in the bedroom, and because at the time, I know I met you during that time, but at the time I was just separated from his mom. So I moved from my beautiful 1,600 square foot home that I own into a 400 square foot apartment, and had my son half the time. So we were like on top of each other sharing a bedroom, and there was no air conditioning in the thing. So it would get so humid, and I'd have shows, and I'd take over the living room, which was the biggest room in the house, and I would ban him to the bedroom, and he would sit there with his laptop and snacks on the bed, just sweating. And but he was so good, he would stay quiet. I'm like, but if you come out and sit on the couch, if you say something, it's fair game. I have to address the heckler in the room. So he would sit there. So after the Zoom shows, like with you, I'd go in there and he'd be like, "Is it done, Dad?" And he's just like pouring sweat. Like, "I'm sorry, buddy. I just I feel so." People are like, "Oh, James is so funny," but he's got his son held hostage in the room next to him, and he's just so sweaty. But he was so supportive, and it was just so bad. I'm running like the tethered Ethernet to me, and I'm screwing over his video games. It was just,
I love this. We're already getting the background of your Zoom comedy days, that the amount of inappropriate things I've said while your kid was just sitting in the background quietly listening and pouring down sweat.
The only time he came on camera was, one time we did the show at Flappers with Evan Causey, and Evan was TikTok very popular at the time. And I was just, casually mentioning to my son, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, Evan? And I'm like, you want to meet him? So Evan, it was a young guy. I go, hey, Evan, my son's kind of a fan. And I remember bringing him around, and the two of them, it was adorable because my son was like, hey. And Evan's like, wow, how you doing? And I'm like, I feel like I brought generations together with TikTok. So.
Oh, that's so adorable. Because I know Evan's not used to that, Eat with Evan on TikTok. He's not used to that fan interaction. People
No.
He's just a nice, normal, everyday dude.
He was a guy who was both of them had that look of awkwardness, and I was like, oh, this is so cute because my son really, and then afterwards went straight to his phone and watched every single Eat with Evan, video that was ever made. So solid. But there's always a story behind Zoom, Dennis. There's always shit going on back here.
Yeah, the most I got going on around me in my Zoom days was my own private studio and my dog sitting under my feet. That's basically what I had going on in the background. It was very chill down here for me.
Well, that depends on what your dog was doing sitting down there. I guess that really matters at that
Waiting
point.
for me to stop so I could take her on a walk. There we go.
There you go. No, he was a champ, but I mean, he didn't, it's just sometimes I felt so badly. I was just like, sorry, buddy, Dad's unemployed, but the only employment he has is to take over 300 of the 400 square foot. So you got two options. You can sit for inappropriately a long amount of time in the bathroom, or you can go to the bedroom and sweat. And the windows opened to an alley in Long Beach. So if you open the window to get air, it was like the smell of all the garbage cans in the alley. So that's how good.
That's on top of it.
That's how good. That's how good a father I am to my son. Dad's career matters. So,
well, how was the Zoom learning for your son during the pandemic?
You know what? He actually did really well. He was. There were moments, but the thing about doing Zoom in a 400 square foot house and having your dad be a former Marine is I hear the teachers give the rules of the class, and I'm in the other room, and he'll say, well, you don't really have to do that. And I go, actually, I heard your teacher clearly, and what your teacher said was, so I was able to really be a part of the process because he was literally he was 10 feet from me around the corner in the kitchen, and we set him up in the kitchen because it had sunlight, and he would sit at the table, which was like a bistro table for two. And I'd be in the living room, again, 10 feet away around the corner. So he was able to, he's personable, he's articulate, and he's smart. So he was able to, express through the camera. And then also, he was helping these poor teachers who just had no technical skills. And you'd hear that, they would ask questions, and my son would raise his hand and go, I think you need to just go to the drop-down menu and do the thing. And he would, give them tech advice. So I was really proud of him. We had a whiteboard, and we'd set school goals, and I would, weigh in on stuff, and we'd make a time schedule every morning so that he and I, we didn't lose our minds. We knew, we'd do this, and then we'd walk to the beach 10 minutes away. We'd come back, and so he was a champ. And then when it went into the next phase, he tried to do the off-camera thing, and I said, buddy, I'm right here. Camera on, looking at the camera. You'll be the student who's always paying attention to the teacher. You're not the guy who gets to, because some of these kids would just shut down and then you'd hear. He had one where his buddy didn't realize his camera was on, and his buddy's little brother comes back and starts screaming and swearing at his brother. And, we're just here. Everybody's like, and so it was just awesome. That was awesome.
I love that during the pandemic, your son has to play tech support during the day for teachers, and then tech support / stage manager for you during comedy at night.
He had a very busy life. We made room for video games and stuff in the middle. We went to the beach a lot. But yeah, my son was tech support for Zoom. And then he was, stage manager, did All Quiet on the Set. We're going live in 3, 2, go to your bedroom. But I always told him, I said, listen, you're welcome to come out. But I said, you can't attempt to disrupt me at my job, or I will do my job. And I don't need a crying kid 10 feet from me in there. So.
I do love the loud sigh that he started the show with. As soon as you mentioned, he just went, here's Dad talking about me again.
He popped his head out there. He is no little boy anymore. That kid is. He's 12. He's 5'6", 130. And he's just he grew.
Like, I heard that sigh and that I could feel his eye roll. He eye rolls and sighs on a college level. He is very advanced.
Grown-ass man, eye rolling and sighing. Very supportive, though. Very supportive. He gave me a big hug, and he's like, go get him, Dad. I go, well, I'm just going to be talking about myself. It's not really, go get him. It's not really, this is not a motivational speech. But I will tell you this, though, Dennis. So I took him. We had a summer vacation, we're trying to figure out what to do. So I took him to Boston, right? Took him to see Fenway Park, see the Red Sox play the Yankees. He wanted to see, I said, well, you want to see baseball? There's only one place to go. Got to go to Fenway. And we saw them, I think they crushed the Yankees 15-5. There's like a weeping woman next to me. Bases were loaded. She goes, it'd be great to see a grand slam. And then Red Sox hit a grand slam. So it's just great. But we did a duck tour while we were there.
Oh, you did?
We did. We had Charlie Chowderhead.
Oh, Dave McDonough, another stand-up comedian friend of mine.
Yeah, he was great.
Charlie is great.
And we had like limited days on the ground, and he wanted to see Boston. I said, well, the best, fastest way is to just take the duck tour. And because I'd never done it. I used to go to school out there. I lived out there. Like, I'd never done it. I've seen it. But so it was a lot of fun. Charlie Chowderhead, solid man, did a great job. And
Dave is great. Dave is one of the reasons why I'm also part of the Duck Tours. Like, mostly Matt Conan and Mike O'Brien, who are also stand-up comedians.
Yeah.
Like, we're stand-up comedians, or we're quickly infiltrating the Boston Duck Tours company. Like, two guys, one guy started it, and then he kind of brought 2 or 3 other guys in, and now he's brought 3 other of us came in this season. And so right now there's like, there's Mike, there's Matt, there's Dave, there's me, Dana. Yeah. Right now there's 6 like official Boston comedians involved. And there's a couple other people that are comedians. Like, they do, like they're doing, they do legit shows.
No,
but
I know.
Yeah. Well, they're not a part of the scene.
Yeah.
They're like doing like the road gigs at like firehouse halls and stuff like that.
Right.
They're not part of the scene, but they're doing these things. And, they're amazingly talented people, and they're great narrators and whatnot, but they're not like part of the comedy scene like the 6 of us kind of are, like name-wise and stuff. And we're just gonna get every Boston comedian who doesn't want to hold down a day job anymore and want to talk about in their native accent.
But this is the best part is I loved it. You could tell he had skills, because my origin story, my superhero origin story was I was in San Diego, started out hosting mobile disc jockey karaoke shows. That's how I started. And
now, was this before or after the Marine?
Right after the Marine Corps. I was just getting out, and I knew I wanted to do stand-up comedy, but I didn't know how to start. So my sister was living in San Diego at the time, and I'm like, look, I'm going to drop my buddy off. He's going to law school. And I said, I need to find a job somewhere loosely affiliated. Get me in the pocket of like entertaining. So she was living in San Diego, and there was a want ad for a company looking for mobile disc jockey karaoke hosts. And it was like Thorn EMI Entertainment was trying to do a nationwide mobile disc jockey karaoke type thing. So they were buying up local mobile entertainment companies. So we were getting paid. Like, this was early 90s, and I'm making $25 an hour. Which was phenomenal. So you had to go in and you had to audition. So I auditioned. Once she got the interview, I went in, auditioned, got the gig. So I started out in San Diego, right out of the Marine Corps, hosting karaoke shows. Just, people coming up to me wanting to sing "Stairway to Heaven," and I'm like, "Oh, sorry, the disc is skipped again. I'm sorry, we can't do that." You want to sing? Oh, you want to sing?
You want to sing this 9-minute song?
You want to sing "The Rose"? Oh, that one's scratched too. I don't seem to have that one ready to go. So I did that, and then I was there for a year and a half, but I wanted to do stand-up. So went up to LA, visited some friends, and I read like the drama log in the Backstage West at the time, and they had an audition for Universal Studios tour guide, and I said, all right, I'm going to go up and audition, and if I get that, then I'll move to LA and I'll do stand-up. So I went up there, like a brutal, I don't know what you guys have to do, duck tour, but that's why my heart went up to Charlie Chowderhead. I said, I know this process. It was like a 2-week process, elimination, and then you get to your final. I don't know what you guys, we had a final on the Universal Studios tour guide, in which you're out there, you're all sitting on the tour, you're going around Universal Studios, and then at any moment, they just go, it's you. And you got to get up, and you got to pick up the tour in that moment, And we also had to show stalling skills. Like in the middle of your tour, it's like, hey, we're stuck. Fill time. And you had to fill time with more Universal Studios knowledge. Like you couldn't just do your thing. You had to like go. So it was a lot of people, 3-week audition process, I think it was. And a lot of people just froze on game day and then didn't get the gig. So...
Oh, wow. So they're making you do the tour as the audition.
Yeah. Your final moment is you got to do it when you're thrown up. They're going to make you stall and make shit up. And if you can't pass that, so you could make it through every single day. Imagine going through a duck tour, a 2-week process, whittle down, and then they do the final day tour and you just don't bring it home that day. And they go, sorry, Dennis, you're not duck tour quality. You need to go home.
Wow, that's brutal. Duck tours was intense, but it was not brutal. It was much more coddling.
Yeah.
Like, we'll get you there no matter what. We'll get you there. Like,
No.
my training was, I started March 15th training. The audition process was like basically improv games.
Yeah.
And then like, all right, cool, we like you. 3 months later, we start, the auditions are in December. We start in March.
Right.
I trained from March 15th to May 17th. May 17th is when I got the go ahead to go start doing tours. And we do have the similar thing where it's like, hey, bridge is going up. We're stuck behind a drawbridge.
Yeah.
We got 10 minutes of extra time to talk about. And luckily we can divulge a little bit, but and go off history a little bit, but a lot of stuff still has to go back to history. But that is brutal.
Well,
let me ask you this.
Yeah.
When you were doing your things, like, were you all contestants in the same tour thing together?
Yeah, we were all sitting on the tram as the tram people. You'd get called up to your thing, and you'd see your...
Well, here's the question I have about that is because I notice this a lot. Like, we would sit in groups and do tours together, and you would notice certain people picking up certain things from other people. Like, I just started saying things and then watching guys, like, I called the BU data science building. They built this to prove that science works. And then I watched everybody else just start saying, this is built to prove that science works somehow. And it's like kind of stealing material while we're training. It's like, that is not a fact. I made up so many fake things to see people just regurgitate those fake things back to me. So
we didn't.
Similar things happened that in the tour where we're like, hey, wait a second, that's my little piece of universal history.
Well, you know what? Because during the audition process, I mean, it was just, you were so nervous because you realized you could not get the job. But I wish it was more like yours. Like, hey, we like you. You're going to work with you. They set this up more like, welcome to Hollywood. Suck it up, kid. Show business is tough. And even though we're going to pay you at the time $5 an hour, you're going to go through the grinder. The guy driving the damn tram was a union guy making 5 times. The guy selling churros that I would drive by was making more money than me. But I had, that was the thrill of being a star. And they would tell you, who else used to be a Universal Studios tour? And they would name, some star. And you're like, yeah, but I'm pretty sure that this wasn't the launch pad for their career. I'm pretty sure that. So what I did, and I would get in trouble for it, once you get the gig, I, being a big Elvis fan, there was one movie that he shot at Universal Studios, his last movie, Change Your Habit with Mary Tyler Moore, and it wasn't part of any approved script. But if I was doing the tour, I would absolutely include the whatever Elvis trivia that I was. And so I got a note. I was going off script. And so I was a little irked. And so we had this sponsor at the time, Texaco, right? Texaco was sponsoring the trams, and they were giving us this, we had to include this stuff. And I was like, for the love of God, this is insane. So my former rebellion I said, you want me to say Texaco? You know what? I'm going to say Texaco so many damn times during this tour. It is ad nauseum. So every time I would do this, and I'd be like, and by the way, this is brought to you by Texaco, star of the American Road. And I would do that non-freaking stop. And that was my form of rebellion. I got another note, but this time it was a good note saying, we really love the way you're incorporating Texaco into the tour. Like, I suck at rebellion. So... But what I did do one time is that what blew me, I don't know about you, there was people that would rent out Universal Studios for private events. Some guy was throwing a bar mitzvah for his son and rented out part of the back lot. And we had to give tour. Wow. I was like, so it's a private party, like a dad show at the time, like dropping 60, 70 grand. And So I'm one of the tour guides, 13-year-old kids who, quite frankly, could give a crap about that. Over here is where the Western blah, blah, blah. So I was losing the crowd. I was losing these kids' attention. And so we would stop in the Western town. And now the Western town building, Universal Studios, they're like fake walls. They could crash into them and stuff. So in order to get the attention of my tram, when we stopped there, I got out of the tram. Oh, no. And I ran through my body up against the Western buildings, and which the kids loved, and I got my attention. But again, I was not supposed to leave the tram to use, like, you can't like jump in the water and swim with Bruce the Shark of Jaws. You can't do that stuff. So you can't walk where Moses parted the Red Sea yourself. You're not supposed to do that. So, but that's why whenever I do these I have such great affinity for the tour guide who can actually do the tour and not sound like they're repeating a script and they'd rather put a gun in their head. So Charlie Chowderhead, my son and I had a great time. He did ask a couple of questions, which I raised my hand. I knew he would have involved me in it, so I'm sorry, Charlie, but I did not raise my hand about anything. Because Parker looks at me, my son's like, how do you go? If I raise my hand, son, I know how this works. I'm part of the tour. And if that guy gets stuck, he's coming back to me. And I'm like, so I'm just going to listen and laugh and be a good participant, but I will not raise my hand because we got stuck in traffic. He did a great job. The whole time I'm thinking, nope, he'd keep talking to me, asking me questions, and I'd want to help, but we didn't do it. So good stuff, though, man.
Yeah, well, you've definitely been an audience member at an open mic of all comedians, and somebody tries to do crowd work with another comedian. You're like, James, I know you, you know me. Stop doing this.
So, Dennis, where are you from? Where are you from? What do you do? Yeah. Nice shirt. Is this a date? Is this a date? Yeah, I can't do that. I couldn't do that to you, so.
So I was listening, and I know, I knew you're military service. I knew you were part of the war. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was the recent Iraq war. Were you in the first Iraq war?
Yeah. See, that's the thing is, I'm old school, buddy. I'm a Desert Storm veteran, and
I didn't realize you were a desert. I thought you were the reason. I thought you were Bush Jr.'s Iraq war. No. Senior's Iraq
I'm OG.
War.
So, and it's funny because people, when I tell them that on stage, I joke about it the other night. Like young people, they look at me. A lot of them don't even remember what the Desert Storm. It's such a small in comparison to what's going on. So I joke about it. I used to give them a little history lesson about Desert Storm, which is always kind of funny. But yeah, no, I'm old school. I'm the original. When I was I went to college on a Marine Corps Scholarship. The Marine Corps paid for college, and there was a lot of people doing that. And America hadn't been in an armed conflict since Vietnam. So the idea of being in the military and you might have to do something like no, it didn't happen. It just didn't happen. And then as soon as I got in, immediately I find myself in Panama over Thanksgiving doing jungle training at the Jungle Operations Center. And, all of a sudden we get called in at night and they're giving us operations in the jungle at night with kind of loose rules of engagement and live ammunition. And I'm like, can I ask a question? It was prepping for the invasion of Panama to go get Noriega. So we're there at night. All of a sudden you're dropping in. Now you forget, like, if I didn't realize this was like live ammo and people wanted to shoot us, it would have been kind of exciting because we would we'd go screaming over the top of the Panama Canal, like 15 feet above the canal at night. And you're just like, if this was a tour, this would be fantastic. And you're screaming. And then we had to jump helicopters into the jungle, and you're going through the jungle at night with night vision goggles, and you're just listening. Well, the key is triple canopy jungle, so it's extremely dense, and it's just like you see the type of creatures in there that you see on TV that you just don't ever want to see in person. And then when you see them, you're like, oh God, just don't touch me. Like I laid down one time, took a little nap in the jungle, and you wake up and I look down and I see on my leg, all the ants that march with all the stuff on their back. They were marching over my leg, between my leg, over my leg, and the other side. And you're like, holy crap. And I'm like, please don't be in my leg. So, and in the jungle, and there's spiders there, Dennis, size of my hand. Size of my freaking hand. At least that's what my emotional memory was. And I remember one time you're going through the jungle, and I'm the lieutenant. I'm in charge. The Marine Corps, the lieutenant leads by example. You don't send your men, you show the men. So I got the machete. I took my turn up front. And we're hacking through the jungle, and you're looking at everybody every now and then. No talking, right? It's all hand signals, and you're just very manly. And I'm cutting through the jungle, and I remember cutting through and turning, looking at my men. And when I turned and looked back, I was like this far from a giant spider web and a spider right here, the biggest thing I've ever seen, the little mandibles moving. And it took everything I had not to just scream like a small child, because I wanted to, but I'm going, you're an officer of Marines, you're leading men in the jungle, there's no screaming here. So I just kind of like...
There's no screaming in the Marines.
So very quietly, I just kind of was like... And then I just kind of looked at my men very calmly like, watch out for that spider, let's go this way. No.
Inside your you're Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. Oh. Outside you're John Wayne.
I just was like, I was shaking. I thought that thing touched my face, I just would run. I would have abandoned my men and run. So we were there, and, we had some interactions with the Panamanian Defense Forces. And then, you get back, and you're like, all right, that was a close call, not a big deal. And then, we went to Okinawa for 6 months to train. And then when you train out there, you're working in the jungle again, but it's training. But that's where the Marine Corps puts their units that are like, if anything happens, it's the unit at Okinawa. You get all the stuff you need. You're fully loaded. So I remember landing from Okinawa. There were 6 months. We landed in the United States, and I picked up the newspaper that day. It happened to be, I think, August 1st, 1990. And the headline was, Hussein invades Kuwait. And I remember looking to my buddy, and this is the words I said, not our problem, and I tossed the newspaper. And... And I went home.
This is where the Arrested Development, this is where you hear his voice is like, little did he know it was going to be his problem.
So I go home, we're getting back, and we had all our stuff still loaded up in pallets from being in Okinawa, and you come home the next day or a day or two, you go back to work, and you're just getting ready to like take some time off and assimilate back into home, and you get called in, and you get told, hey, by the way, we're not offloading the pallets. We're going to get your affairs in order. We're going to the desert to train for a month, and then we're shipping out. And we're just like, okay. So we went, put together your last will and testament, get your stuff together, go train at 29 Palms with live ammunition, which is a little more alarming than regular training. And then we shipped out. And so we're going for I think we were going for 14 months in total. And then, so by the time I got back, I was like, okay. Been everywhere, done a lot of stuff. I was satisfied with my participation. And then I wanted to, come out and pursue stand-up comedy. So, yeah, the government got their money's worth out of me.
So you joined the military in the 80s, and I'm a kid of the 80s. I thought we were closer in age. It sounds like you're a little bit older than I thought. I'm 42. I thought you were late 40s. You're a little bit older than that.
57.
Yeah, wow. I didn't even know you were that much older than me because...
I'm moisturized.
You look great.
I'm moisturized, yeah. And this is actually my hair. This is like, people ask me, I don't dye my hair. My beard betrays my age, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't judge people, beards go gray very early.
Exactly, yeah.
But, so when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, there was GI Bill, use the military, go to college, pay for college. Let's join Uncle Sam, let him pay for your college. Yeah. That sounds very much similar why you joined the military, it sounds like.
Yeah, they, and I joined, I was going to go, my parents had, we had 3 kids and both parents working, and they were struggling with how they're going to pay for college for everybody, and they were going to take a second mortgage on the home, and my dad was in the Marines, and so I thought, I was always open to military service, and so I started looking up about maybe going to one of the academies. That way my parents wouldn't have to pay for college, so I could pay for my own college, and then so I was looking at West Point, looking at Annapolis, and then it's junior year in high school, there was an award ceremony. I was getting some award for something I did. And this guy got on stage, and he was getting a Navy ROTC scholarship. And I asked him, so what is a Navy ROTC? And he explained to me, you get the scholarship, and then you go to the school of your choice. And I was like, so I looked it up, and if you do that, it's one less year commitment than an academy. And I'm like, okay, well, if I get the scholarship, I can go to a college. They'll pay for college. I only have to pay back 4 years instead of 5 years after an academy. And that way my parents don't have to pay for my college, and I serve the country, blah, blah, blah. So then I started looking up the list of colleges, and I'm like, oh my God, there's some damn good colleges that I could never afford to. So I first got the scholarship, I actually started out with a Navy scholarship because I didn't think I had what it takes to be a Marine. My dad was a Marine. 2 of his brothers are Marines. There's stories of like bar fights and eye gouging. I'm like, I'm not an eye gouging bar fighter. I was like, I think I'm stubborn, a little tough, but I'm not a. So then so I stuck my thumb in his eye, and I'm like, I'm not that guy. So I was Navy when I started, but I looked at the list of colleges was amazing. I thought, well, damn, if I get I got the scholarships. I said, well, what the hell? Apply to every college you want to go to because it's paid for. So I applied to Harvard. And to the greatest shock, Harvard said yes. So that's how I ended up in Boston. So I went to Harvard on a Marine Corps scholarship. And then we would do our military obligations at MIT. So I actually took classes at MIT and Harvard. And never had to stick my thumb in a man's eye during college. never had to pull a gun on a guy. So yeah, and then from there I went into the Marine Corps as soon as I got out there. So, but we had a lot of military commitments in college, and we had to do ROTC stuff in the morning at MIT, and then we have your own student battalion like they do in the academies. And senior year, I was like the commander of the battalion, and so I was like, I played rugby in college. I had a job as a security guard at night. I had the commanding officer of the ROTC battalion. I still had to pass my freaking classes at Harvard. Like I didn't sleep. I was tapped out. I was enjoying myself, but I was like, this has got to give. So I was actually this is how bad it was. I was looking forward to the Marine Corps because then I only had to do one thing. I actually, when I be a Marine, I could do that and I'm good to go. But this whole student athlete work to pay for stuff, commanding like second job. And then it was just, it was tough senior year. It was pretty tough.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, well, and also, you're in Cambridge, Boston.
Loved it, man.
In the
Loved
90s, which was so different than it is 30 years later now where it's at now.
Dude, no. I was there when Doug Flutie threw the pass to Gerard Phelan, the bomb. I was there when Larry Bird and Magic. I was there. I'm a Laker fan, and I had to exist in Boston, Massachusetts, which I will tell you as a sports fan, let me tell you how horrible. I would go to bars. Fortunately, the Lakers, won a little bit more. But go to bars, and they'd play each other. And every time Larry Bird would score, the freaking bartender would ring that damn bell. You know how many times I heard that bell? Because Larry Bird would score. And I went to the Garden one time to see. My buddy's cousin was in marketing for the Boston Garden. For some reason, he wasn't using his floor tickets when the Lakers came to town. So we were like 4 rows off the floor. Oh, wow. And it was the Celtics had a 48-game home winning streak. Lakers come to town and end it. Now, I'm probably one of 2 visible Laker fans in the Garden. Containing my joy, because it's just really a scary moment. But it was so fun to see that. It was great to be there when I was there because of Celtics and Lakers. It was awesome. And, the Patriots were in the Super Bowl, but they got destroyed by the Bears. So all my friends watching that one, they were hammered by halftime and went home. It was just unbearable to the men.
Well, when you came back, I knew you were here a couple months ago because Brian Kiley was coming on the podcast at the same time.
Yeah.
The Boston Comedy Festival, and I wanted to hit you up when you were in town, but my schedule just didn't work out. Like
we were
Brian
so
and I
fast.
end up recording remotely because I didn't have time to go see him.
Yeah.
And just hang out with him.
That's right.
I
He
was
was out
also
there.
feeling under the weather and stuff. Yeah. And like right around the same time that you were out here and whatnot. So, like, do you even recognize the Boston that it was when you were a kid to the Boston now? Because even on the tour, I'm not from here. I'm from Baltimore. I've lived here for 10 years. So it's always been this to me. Like, I can remember the Seaport District being nothing to what it's built out now in the past 10 years. But, the city has changed so much for you that lived here. How, like, when you take your son around, you're like, hey, there used to be this thing here and no longer.
Yeah.
Is that kind of memory lane stuff for you?
Kind of. I mean, I've been back and forth doing gigs over the years, so I've kind of seen it, every couple of years I get back. So it's not actually Harvard itself is, very few of the haunts that I would go, the late night 24-hour burgers. I mean, it was just like, so there's a few things I can still show them, but that's changed a lot. But Boston to me, I mean, the fact that the Garden is gone, that was shock to my system. I'm glad I got to go. I saw a hockey game and Celtics there. But it hasn't changed too much for me because I don't.
Well, the old Garden had like something like 110 obstructed seats where they put seats right behind a column that was holding the building up. And you had to pay for the seat wasn't free. It was a seat that you paid half price for to stare at a giant steel column holding.
I know, but it was the garden you wanted to go. I mean, I should talk. I sat on the floor. I was spoiled, but my son loved it too. We went. He was introduced to the Boston accent. My dad had it, but this guy, we were in East Boston going to get lunch, just walking through, and we went to this little deli, and it's just, he had never experienced this. I had to get, when I was there, people yelling over the counter. There's no line. It's not, you don't step forward. People are just screaming. And I remember going to a place in Cambridge, and all my friends in New York, let me tell you something, you just have to yell. And if you hear them yell back, they got your sandwich order. And I was like, what do you get? You go over there. Pops down over there. I was like, so I'm in the first time, so, we're in there, same thing, we're in line, and this guy just walks in really loud. Hey, what do you got back there? He goes, we got chicken parm. Chicken parm, huh? Chicken parm. All right. Chicken parmesan. I love that. Just love the accent.
Yeah, until you're with a woman when you hear the accent, and then you're just it's immediately turned off. Fuck me harder. Come on.
It's a harsher. Yeah, I'll tell you that.
It's, yeah. And trust me, I'm from Baltimore, so we also don't have a great accent either. The Baltimore accent, we all sound like this. We're going to go up Blair Road there, hon, and get ourselves a zinc to wash our clothes in this. With water, it's all accents can, have endearing and terrible qualities all at the same time.
They draw you in and they repulse you simultaneously.
So when you were talking about during the pandemic, you had a giant dry erase board with timing and scheduling. Do you think, were you always scheduled and on time and organized like that, or was that a product of being in the military? No, that was a product of actually being a comic, because when I first started being a comedian, I don't know about you, I'd never had an open schedule like this. I'd never been the one responsible for setting the timetable. You did stuff. You went to school, you're in the military. So I look back and you think have all this freedom and you're using your time, but I just was really not good at doing the things I needed to do and convincing myself that I was using my time. And I really got good at it when I got married and had a kid, because then it's okay, but here's the reality. You don't have time anymore. So you better get good at using the time you have, or you don't get to be a comedian anymore. So then I had to get really good at using time, because it's other people need your time. And so that probably helped me more than anything in the pandemic, realizing, okay, my son needs a frame of reference because he's untethered during this day. I need a frame of reference because I'm untethered during this time. And that was the time I was separated from his mom, going through a divorce. So emotionally, I needed a schedule. I needed to know what was going on. So I would say it's more of a life thing for me, but because I struggled, I've been doing this forever. And I was, and I'm pretty disciplined as a human, but I was pretty bad at really looking back. God, I had so much time to do stuff that I could have used in a way. But I see a lot of comics struggle with that. I try to counsel them and go, listen, man, a life untethered where you create priorities, you decide what's important, and you got to be honest with yourself. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. And you got to figure it out, and you got to figure out the way it works for you. And then don't beat yourself up about it when you screw it up. Just do it better tomorrow, because it doesn't ever get any easier. It just gets different, And as my life changes now, I'm still teaching myself the same things I taught myself 30 years ago was, hey, you don't have any shows the next 5 days. You got a lot of stuff going on. Maybe you should just take the time to write for an hour every day without agenda, just to connect your brain to the comedy every day. So it just moves it along. And I'm like, it made me happy. And I said, yeah, you idiot, you've been doing this forever. You should know this by now. But I still have to sit down and go, yeah, maybe I'll just write some jokes today. Maybe I'll do that. Well, all right, let's go back to your early days of comedy. You were a DJ. You wanted to do stand-up comedy. You moved to L.A. You started,
tour guide, baby.
As a tour guide. What made you? I started comedy in the early 2000s when I got out of high school, doing it here and there, really just asking friends, finding open mics, and I did open mics like 2 a year. It wasn't until I was 29 in my late 20s.
Putting your foot on the accelerator.
It wasn't until I was in my late 20s when you can find these things online more often. And that, my catalyst to finally taking stand-up comedy serious was I got fired from a job, and I decided that I needed to take, I was working in radio, and I needed to take my entertainment career in my own hands now, instead of being dependent upon a company. And I dove first fit in stand-up comedy. In 1990, 91, how were you finding where the comedy, like, how did you said earlier you didn't know how to be a comedian. How did you find out how to be a comedian in the early 90s?
Yeah, it was kind of a open Wild West to me. Like when I was in the Marine Corps.
Because this is also to paint the picture of the time frame. This is right after the comedy bubble.
Everything was crashing in front of me as I started. So I'm in the Marine Corps. You know, I'd always done stuff in college in front of people, not like acting and stuff, but we did all kinds of stunts and public stuff and lip sync contests and stuff. And so in the Marine Corps, I was known, I was about as much of a smart ass as you could be and still maintain the dignity of being a Marine officer. And so we'd have these dinners and stuff, and they would always have me MC. In our unit, we had a kangaroo court of officers where we would have these secret meetings, and I was elected the judge of the kangaroo court. I had authority over all officers except the colonel. And we would bring charges against each other for stupidity in action over the course of the year. And you know, so there were rules, and I had complete authority over these people. And we had truth serum, which was prune juice and tequila, which I would administer if I thought you weren't telling me the truth. So it was debauchery, fun, abusive, things that we would imagine a bunch of drunk Marines, what we'd accuse each other of, and it was just really fun. So, you know, when I was in the Desert Storm, my colonel came to me because we had a bunch of reserve officers attached to us. And reserve officers have regular jobs, they weekend warrior, now they're being mobilized. So he wanted to bond everybody together. So they called me and he asked me if I would write him jokes. He wanted to roast everyone. And so I had a couple days. No, he asked me, but it's not asked. When a colonel makes a request, I was given a legal order to bring funny to my boss. So I had a couple days, and he was going to say it, so I was able to take shots at superior officers, and I could never say it in public. So I handed him the jokes. I had some of my buddies help me, and then they called me in before the dinner, and I was like, oh, crap, I must have crossed the line. You know, a colonel needs to see you. It's never a good thing. And I went in there thinking, and he was sitting on the couch, and he asked me, he goes, well, how did you see this joke being delivered? I was like, oh, okay. So I demonstrated some of the jokes to him. So he went up, great public speaker. He just killed. And the stink eye I was getting from people who knew damn well where that joke came from. So I said, okay, if I survive the war, I'm going to do comedy, because I had to do it under the gun, and it worked. And I'm like, all right. So
under a literal gun.
I think I'm the only comedy origin story who was given a legal order during a war to produce jokes for a colonel, and then have the people that received those jokes have legal authority to come back and not blow back on me. So when I hear people cancel culture, I had people who had the legal authority to hurt me and torture me because they didn't like what I said. So I have no sympathy for your feelings, okay? I had a guy knock on my door to read me the riot act, telling me he didn't appreciate it. He got all over my shit. So I was like, he jacked me up. He was pissed. So then, but my boss heard about it, who outranked this guy. And he dragged that guy back in front of me and told him that Lieutenant Connolly was speaking with my authority, and if you have any problem with this, and you come to me, but you leave him alone. And I was like, So my boss had my back. He said, no, you don't come back. That was done under the rules that were fair. So when I got out, I decided that I was going to do this, and that's why I was searching for a way to begin. I didn't know how to begin. There was no, structure. Comedy classes I never heard of them at the time. I didn't know what to do. My sister, did plays and was a singer, and so I just wanted, my only thought was do something that puts you near, something that forces you into the pocket, because I'm a really responsible individual. And I knew that if responsible Jim got a job, then creative Jim would die. He would never come out. I would never let him come out. So I only want a job that pushed creative me out into the limelight. That's why I did mobile DJ, because I was paid $25 an hour. That's why I got a job at Universal Studios, because I needed that. And when I was broke, I promised myself that you will never hire out responsible, organized Jim, ever. No one gets to him, because he will dominate you. And so now And I knew, but I'll use him for my benefit, my career. So, but then at some point I got to a place like, okay, these two guys can now live side by side. I just knew in me it wasn't possible. Now it's fine. I could do that now if I had to. If I want to, I'll get a job and it doesn't bother me in the least. But early on, I'm like, nope, too responsible, too much pressure. You're just going to want to do a good job and you're going to like the money and you're never going to start. So that's why I did the mobile disc jockey karaoke. I can carry a tune, not a singer, but if you put me out there, I'll do it. And I ruined many people's night at Benihana. I have, because when you're not singing, your job is to sing to motivate people. And this was my nightmare scenario, happened very early on. So I get the gig as a mobile disc jockey karaoke host in the San Diego area. And of course, my boss, being a businessman, knew that I just got out of the Marine Corps. And he's looking at the Camp Pendleton thinking, what a lucrative business target that would be if we could get Jim to go back and do a show there. And I'm like, I left that place a decorated officer of Marines with combat experience, and you're asking me to go back in front of the same Marines and go, hey, anybody want to sing the Beatles? It was the most, I was like, I can't do it. And so they leaned on me. So they had a gig in like Camp Pendleton, some formal type dinner, and they wanted me to do it, and I agreed to it. And I'm like, this is the most humiliating thing I can think of, is to walk out there and have people. And in that room was my best friend from college, and great Marine. And we're a little competitive because he was the poster child for the Marine Corps. Like, he took off his shirt and you're like, all right, screw you, put that back on. He just looked fantastic. I had tiny love handles I had to get rid of. He had a V. If you looked at him, you go, Marine. You look at me, you go, get out of the way. You're ruining the picture. This guy's a man. So he was in the audience, and I thought, oh, my God, he's going to put his foot on my neck. He's going to watch me die. He is going to just relish in my misery. And when nobody was singing, and it was awkward as hell, and he's not a singer, my buddy stood up, signed up to sing with me, and jumped in. And I looked at him, until the day I die, that was the greatest thing anyone's ever done for me, because he did it, and then someone else did it, and I was like, man, you could have buried me, and I wouldn't have been angry at you, but instead you put your arm around me and said, all right, I'll sing with you. And so that's how I started there, and then did that for a year and a half, and then just, they had a bridal shower, these convention center, not bridal shower, bridal show, where they have all these things in the runways, and so they needed a host, and apparently the company I worked for had this guy that did it. He was their host, but he couldn't do it. So they asked around the country, is there anyone else who could do it? And my boss was like, hey, I think my guy could do it. So I filled in for him. And you gave a script, and you have a co-host, and, she was very Disney perky. And I'm looking at this, Dennis, and I'm thinking, I want to do some jokes. And they specifically told me, don't do jokes. Stay on script. So
well, we know how well being rebellious worked out for you last time. Let's see if you can do the rebellion the right way.
Oh, no, I rebelled. It's just it was taken the wrong way. So I, like the good comic I am, I wrote 3-4 jokes. And so before the show, I'm back and I'm pacing. I'm a pacer. I'm a pacer when I'm happy. I'm a pacer when I'm stressed. I was pacing head down. And they're like, are you okay? Are you okay? I said, no, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. I'm just pacing, and I get up there. And so I come out, and instead of saying the script, I opened with my 4 jokes. And they all worked. People laughed. And I remember in my head, I'm looking at this girl. She's looking at me like, what? That's not in the script. And I'm looking at her thinking, I will never see you again. I will never be here again. I will never, ever do this again. I'm like, my jokes worked. So that's when I went to LA, and that's when I started looking how to get up to LA. And that's when so the Marine Corps gave me the motivation to try. And then that form of rebellion gave me the motivation then to leave after a year and a half in San Diego and just say, you got to go to LA and you got to start. So Universal Studios too.
Where did you first start doing comedy in LA? Where was the first place? Because you work a lot of clubs throughout it, and you're doing corporate stuff. So you're like, you're not in one zone. Like we both know, there's different regions of comedy. There's TV guys, there's clubs, there's corporate.
I have always been a utility guy. I've always been someone who assimilates and can be plugged in, and it's good and it's bad. But there's nothing I've done that I haven't been able to do. Some things I'm better fit for, obviously, but I'm very fortunate that I've done, clubs and colleges and casinos and corporates and TV and all that stuff, radio, because I'm very pliable. Getting to Universal Studios and doing that, and then I also I saw there was a class that was stand-up comedy class. And I know me, if I tell people that I'm going to do something publicly, then I do it. That's how I dangle the carrot in front of me. So it was a class taught by Sandy Shore, Mitzi Shore's daughter at the Comedy Store. And it was the first time she taught a class. It was a 6-week class at UCLA Extension. So I thought, you know what? Take the class. You said you just got to start somewhere. Take the class. So I took the class and told people I was going to do it, told them when the graduation show was in the original room. I told all my friends so that way I would do it. And, in these classes, you're supposed to, the goal is to craft 3 minutes of material, right, over 8 weeks. Well, I'm new. I'm like, every class was just an opportunity to do 3 new minutes to me. I didn't craft shit. I did 3 new minutes every week, and they always told me not to do it. And then I even did 3 new minutes on my graduation show. And I look back and I go, well, you kind of missed the point of the class. But they let me host the show in the original room because I was pretty naturally confident in front of people. So I got to host, I think, the first half of the show in the OR. And it was awesome because, your first experience was a supportive environment with people who came to watch you succeed. And then my second set was in this shitty little bar, hit the open mic scene, all confident, full of excitement. And there's the old...
Very, very well told story.
Oh, my God.
A lot of people have had a similar
And then you
story.
go, and you're feeling good about yourself because, you got, at least I write 3 new minutes every week. And you go, and it was a bar show, and the restaurant's in the back, and there's like 4 guys at the bar, 4 of them not really paying attention to what's going on. We got the old host who looks like a Catskills comic hosting the show in this miserable little bar. And he's up there bombing, just telling the guys at the bar, well, I'm not doing my A material because this isn't really room for my A. I'm like, what the hell is A? But he's just telling them this. Bring it up. We're dying one after the other. They're not paying attention. People in the back are eating, visibly annoyed that there's a comedy show at the bar. And before I get up, the host finally gets angry at the guys at the bar. This is a comedy show. You're not even paying attention. Telling them they need to turn around. Well, you know what they did instead, Dennis? They left. They left.
Of course. So
that I get brought up. My first experience was an open mic with no audience but a couple of comics, and I could see the people behind them visibly upset that we were still there while they ate dinner. And I drove home that day, and I thought, what the hell have I done? What have I done? What have I done? So I had a couple open mic experiences, and then I saw an ad again in the drama log variety. You see, I was always looking for I need help. There's got to be something in here in the drama. Backstage West, save me now. So I found this ad. There was a stand-up comedy troupe that was forming in the Valley. And I was like, stand-up comedy troupe. And I was like, okay. So I auditioned for that. And I got in. And it was a group of a husband and wife team who had been doing stand-up comedy in the 70s and 80s. And now they did some producing. But they were... Basically, they wanted to create a troupe so that you could, a place to grow your act, right? Come and learn comedy and practice with other comics in a small theater. So I did that for several years, kind of learning how to build the set, how to write a joke, how to refine stuff. But I kind of created a character. I started doing a character is what came out of me. And but then I left and I started hitting the open mic scenes as the character. But now I'm doing it 3-4 years. I haven't acted. I got 7 minutes. It's good. It's a solid. So then people started liking it. It was different. People started booking me. I started to get into clubs, So I was able to grow with this character. Fun to do. And so that's how I started being known around LA was this act, this I did. So it was my starting point was, some classes, some horrible experiences, the troupe, and then stepping out into the LA comedy scene. But at least I knew I had 7-8 good minutes. It was just learning how to do it over and over again in shitty situations.
Yeah, you have, clearly by listening to the story, what a lot of people unfortunately don't have when they start comedy or even when they continue their comedy career is self-awareness.
I have it now. You're talking to this guy who's reflecting back with self-awareness. So I thank you, but the self-awareness, a little bit then, a lot more now.
Well, you had a little bit of it then. A lot of people don't have that ever. So like, that's the thing, like, that some people have trouble with is finding where to start. And they just go, where do I start? They just ask people, how do I get into this? What do I do? None of them actually go out and do the thing that they don't search out and find the thing like you did. You went out there and you found a home to start doing comedy. You found the open mics. You found.
Excited. I didn't know where to go.
You didn't know where to go. You had to search them.
Yeah.
Some people just wait till somebody tells them where to go. You had that at least enough awareness to go do that. Now, granted, you made also similar mistakes a lot of people make with the brand new. Like, I'm going to do new material every time.
Well, I was 28 when I started, too. I was 28,
yeah.
so I was like already a grown man compared to a lot of comics who are like starting out and their parents are still paying their rent. And I'm like, who are you? I make crap money. My parents aren't helping me. I'm way more angry at this point than they are.
So, working through, when did you, because I knew you did VH1 back in the day. You hosted a show with VH1. Where did you go from stand-up comedian doing open mics to working with VH1? What was that? How did that opportunity
come? So, started to do this act and with this comedy troupe, and then the husband and wife, Barb and Steve North, managed me at the time because they were pitching a show. Somebody loved the show idea, and they said, well, sign your best comedian, and let's go. So they came to me, and so I was like, all right, So at the same time, other things happened, so we just started working together because opportunities were coming, and they had experience. They know what they were doing in terms of dealing with other people coming to me for these type of things. So I started to, my career started with one of the guys in the troupe I was in. They left, and they were trying to shake things up in LA, so they were doing an industry showcase night. And it sounds great, right? Industry showcase, because people just picture like the power. If you know comedy, industry showcase is your friends doing a show hoping that someone will show up that's from the industry. At best, you get textile exporting industry, but you don't get the entertainment industry. So it was in the basement of Luna Park. And, you make, at the time, pre-internet, you make a flyer. You're mailing it around to all the people. You get all the addresses. It was a really humbling experience. And you go there, and you know what? It was pretty mediocre. And you could clearly see this place wasn't hopping with industry. But they're friends of mine, and we're trying to, so you do your set, right? So like a week later, my manager gets a call from a casting department who sent an underling to the showcase, and they liked me. And they wanted to put me on the Jerry Lewis telethon. I'm like,
and that was a big deal in the 90s.
Still big. And I was like,
everyone watched.
Yeah, so I was like, I grew up watching. I'm like, from that show, there was a casting person from Eddie Foy Casting, and so the underling brings it to him. He loves me. He calls my manager. So I'm like, so all of a sudden, for the first time in a long time, they were doing the Jerry Lewis Telethon comedy at the Improv in Hollywood. So I went from the basement of Luna Park, begrudgingly, to, we want to put you on the Jerry Lewis Telethon. We're taping it live at the Hollywood Improv. And, Norm Crosby's there. So I show up to Hollywood Improv. I've never been to Hollywood Improv before. I show up. All the other comics are people that you know, right? They had a couple of spots for new people like me. So I get there, and there's a table with Bud Friedman. Norm Crosby's hosting, old school comedian. All the comedians that I knew from the 50s and 60s are sitting at Bud Friedman's table. All the guys from like Gomer Pyle and the Ed Sullivan Show, and all these guys. Shelley Berman, I got his album right there on the wall. First album that won a Grammy, spoken, and they're there, and I'm losing my mind with what's going to happen. So I got like the 5th or 6th spot, sweet spot. The crowd is hot, and I'm like, this is it. This is your career. Your spot, dude. This is it. And right before I go on, Norm Crosby goes up and does the "Let's remember why we're here" speech. And I am losing my shit. I'm having a panic attack in the hallway of the Improv, and I I was, I'm like, oh my God. And they go, ladies and gentlemen. And then they introduced me. And I don't know exactly what I said, but people asked me, because it worked. And people asked me, and I go, you know what? I tell people I panicked correctly. I just leaned into the terror of the moment and said something. And it made sense to people. First time I learned about, dude, just speak to the emotion. And I said something, and they laughed, and I thought, oh my God, I have them in this moment of despair. So then I began my set, and it went really well. And I can see Bud Friedman clapping, and I'm walking off, and I'm like, what just happened to me? And after the show, I'm standing on the sidewalk of the Improv, and all the old school comedians, all the OGs that I watched on TV, they're all hanging out with me. They're telling me how funny I am, telling me how I got it. And I'm just like, I couldn't believe what happened to me. So I walk around the corner. I'm going home that night, driving my Toyota Tercel stick shift. I go around the corner to get in my car, and my car wasn't there. And I said to myself, no freaking way. No way. Nope. So I go, you know what? I retrace my steps to the Improv. I go back in the door. They're like, hey, what's up, JP? I go, no, I've just got to make sure this actually happened. So I walked the walk a second time, Dennis. I went out there and I was like, son of a bitch. They took my freaking car while I'm on stage thinking I made my career. So that was my big moment and my low moment. So after that set, Bud Friedman talks to my manager and I and about getting spots. Maybe I should, call in for spots. And or he said you should come around or contact us. So we reach out to him, right? A year goes by, we reach out, nothing. Never heard from him again. I'm like, all right, welcome to Hollywood. So the next year, the Jerry Lewis Telethon is again. And the casting people reach out to me, hey, we'd like to see James come back and do it again. I'm like, let's do it again. This time they're taping in Hollywood, same thing. This time Jerry Lewis himself is hosting comedy night. I'm like, here we go. Be fun. So I get there right before the show. I break a toe. It's excruciating. It's black and blue. I can barely stand without, visibly grimacing. And I wanted to tell, I said, we need to tell him. And my manager's like, no, because they might replace you on the spot if they think you're not going to be able to perform. So I was walking with like a cane at the time just to have pressure off. And so I said, nope. She said, you just have to, got to go in there. Just fake it till you make it. You just got to not. I said, all right. So I went in there, walking in with a broken toes. And I'm just like, get 2 broken toes. And I'm just walking and I'm just grimacing. But you could feel the adrenaline kicking in. So I said, she just said, don't tell him. Don't talk about it. So we agreed not to talk about it. So I get introduced. Jerry Lewis introduced me this time. And so right before I go on, same thing, man. Hot spot, crowd's hot. This time I feel more confident. I've been here before. And right before I go on, Jerry Lewis is like, this next gentleman, this kid, right before the show, he broke his toes. And I'm like, how the hell did he know this? So he's going on, and he's trying to make it sincere, but it sounds ridiculous. This is the kind of kid he is. Break a toe and still go on with the show. The audience is starting to laugh, waiting for the punchline. There is no punchline. He introduces me, and I'm thinking, we're raising money for children who are going to die before the age of 21. And you are attempting to make me seem like some noble warrior with 2 freaking broken toes. So I walk up, I'm thinking, again, what the hell's going on? How do I save this moment? So I walk up and I just decide, I go with my gut. I'm standing next to Jerry Lewis, for God's sakes. I'm just like, I really gave it up hard for the legendary Jerry Lewis, right? And everyone's clapping, and you can see Jerry's kind of like digging the moment. So he turns and smiles to me, and he stayed there on stage. And we're just staring at each other. And I'm thinking to myself, get the fuck off the stage. That's it. That's all I wanted to do. I don't have anything else to say to you. And he's just standing in my moment. And again, I was like, ah! So I don't know exactly what I said, but I just went with it. Had a great set. Get off the stage. Same thing. Bud Friedman's there shaking my hand. Everybody's high-fiving me, and I get off, and Bud comes up to us and says, James, why haven't you called? And I was just like, I'd bite my tongue. Like, we called regularly, and we're blown off. So why haven't you called? So I was like, oh, well, I think my manager. So then, like a week later, I'm sitting in my apartment in Santa Monica. He's talking about, I think you'd be good for my Vegas club, and, we should get you spots here. But again, I'm like, you know what? I heard this last time. It felt good. This all felt good, but, what are you going to do? My phone rings at home. This is all new to me. And I get to go, hello, James, this is Bud Friedman. I had a fallout for 9:15 on Friday night. Do you want the spot? And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? I'm like, yeah. Then I hang up the phone. I'm like, Bud Friedman just called me my house. Just gave me a 9:15 on a Friday. So I go down there, and I'm stressed as hell. But still, it's like, come on, I got a weekend spot at the Improv. And he's in the room. I do my spot. Not an easy crowd, but I was happy with what I did for the show. And he came up to me afterwards. He goes, James, I think you do really well in my Vegas room. How many minutes can you do? And I said 30. And he said to me, how many of them are good? And I looked at him and I leaned in and I went, 30.
Nice.
And he smiled and nodded at me. And then that's how I started getting booked. Now, the good news is they put me in touch with his friend who was his booker. And they started booking me at the Improv in Vegas and the Improv in Tahoe and all those stuff. That's how I got into the pipeline of comedians with way better careers than me who were famous. The bad news is, like, Bud gave up controlling interest of the Improv like 2 weeks later. And so I got into the Improv. I was the last comics passed by Bud Friedman at the Hollywood Improv. But then a few weeks later, he's not controlling the booking anymore. But he did control the booking for like the Vegas and the Tahoe and all the satellite rooms at the time in the casinos. So I worked for Bud for years in Improv casinos, but I didn't get a lot of spots at the Hollywood Improv, despite the fact that I cut my teeth. My TV terror was in front of Jerry Lewis and Bud Friedman and Tom Poston and Shelley Berman and all these old school guys. And I ran into Norm Crosby years later at the London Heathrow Airport. I recognized him with his wife. And I've seen old school comedians at airports. I always go up to them. Ran into Bob Newhart that way and Don Rickles. I go up to Norm and I say, honor, sir, I just got to let you know, you almost crushed me in my first TV appearance. And I explained to him what happened. He laughed at me. He goes, I'm sorry. I go, yeah, I said, I almost like that. I almost died on the spot. I almost folded right there. So that is how my career went from working with the troupe, getting a showcase spot, getting on TV in front of Bud, nothing happens for a year, come back and do it a second time, and then the second time. So that's why I tell comics, I go, the first time sounded like it should have guaranteed me moving up. It didn't give me anything except 4 or 5 calls to the Improv, and then they never returned my call. A year later, I did it again, and they acted as if nothing had happened, so you had to come back again. He saw it twice. This time it stuck. This time he did something about it. Then he was out of there 3 weeks later. But it moved me to the next level. It moved me into shows with comedians who you had sitcoms, comedians who I'd heard of, comedians who were famous, and they just doing favors for Bud Friedman. So that's how I started then populating a higher level with people that were better than me, had better careers than me, and could teach me things. And I was working gigs. I got paid money, like money. You could live off money, and encouraged me to merchandise. I recorded my first CD at the Improv in Vegas, so I could sell it. And so that for me was the catalyst to the next level. And then from there, once I was circling at that level, then the Boston Comedy Festival started, and Vin DeBona, huge man at the Boston Comedy Festival, and my managers at the time had worked with Vin DeBona on a show. So they were active in helping with the festival, and so they connected me with the Boston Comedy Festival. And I had just finished recording my first CD at the Improv in Vegas, and I did the Boston Comedy Festival, And Sonny Fox from XM Comedy was there. At the time, there was no Sirius. It was just XM. And XM Comedy was one guy, Sonny Fox. OG, radio DJ, comedy man, loved comics. So he was at the festival.
This was what, 2002?
This was, early 2000. And so Sonny saw me and loved me. And he said, do you have a CD? I'm like, yes, I do. So I gave him my CD, and he played the crap out of it. So now I started getting all this airplay on XM Comedy. So now suddenly I'm getting pushed out to the masses. And then Sirius came about. And Sirius started seeing who XM was playing. So then Sirius reached out to me and asked me if I had a CD. So now I sent it to Sirius. So now XM and Sirius are playing. And then I had an opportunity to record another one. I did a set for a buddy, Don Friesen, right? Don was he wanted to record something at the Crest Theater in Sacramento. And he's like, you want to do a 40 minutes intermission, then I'll do my hour. I'm like, great. He goes, you want a tape? Like, you know what? I'm good. I just got a great tape at Boston Comedy Festival. I don't really care. So Don, of course, runs the camera anyway. And I step out there and do a front-to-back 40 that's just like the best 40 I've ever done in my life in a theater. So I get the tape. I'm like, oh, my God. This is like everything worked. I got a great tape. So I stripped the audio, and we were going to give it to Sonny as a second CD. And he called me himself. And he goes, listen, man. He goes, it's too echoey. He goes, we're XM. A lot of people listen to us in their cars. He said, I think you're doing yourself an injustice. I can't release this. And I thought, oh my God, I just did the perfect set. And Sonny, because the audio wasn't done for recording, it was just a videotape, right, with the audio. So that's when my managers were like, well, we need to record it now. And I was like, stressing out about it. So we did a instant, one day, one shot, small theater, got radio engineers from Clear Channel, one shot, knocked it out, recorded it. I went in the studio, eliminated all the one woman who laughed really weird. We edited her out and sent that off. He was like, this is fantastic. He gave it a showcase spotlight for a while, put it in rotation, and XM Sirius took it. And then my buddy was opening for the Blue Collar Comedy Tour, and he had a show. He played the crap out of it. And then SiriusXM merged. And so both of them got all my CDs. And then I think, I heard that when they started the Blue Collar Comedy Radio, that, Foxworthy and company wanted them to be clean. And he didn't like some of the stuff they're playing. So he basically told them to clean house. So they got rid of all the stuff that didn't meet the standards. And guess who had 2 CDs in the small pile that was left over? Me. So guess who got tremendous airplay because they had no choice? Me. So suddenly my stuff is in massive rotation because it passed the standards of that channel. So that is how, and then from there, people hear you, they want to book you on corporate gigs, you're getting residuals. So that's how it really spidered out for me. And then the VH1 thing came about was because Ed McMahon was doing a Star Search reboot called Next Big Star. And so I auditioned for that, got the audition, and then won my first round, won a couple rounds in Vegas. And Ed loved me because he was a Marine. We were chatting it up. And one of the executive producers of that show was George Slaughter from Laugh-In, right? Guy created Laugh-In. And so I was on that show. And I was moving up the food chain, winning every week and moving on and working with this. And I was doing my character. It's kind of an odd cat. And so I get off one day, and I don't know who George Slaughter is at the time. I thought he was the old guy with the headphones sitting behind the TV. And I get off stage. I just killed and won my night. And I get off stage, and I walk past him. He looks at me, and he goes, what the hell was that? What? And I stare at him, and I go, who the hell are you? And he exploded laughing. and I walked by, and my managers were like, you just passed the test. Like, he was pushing you. And you just pushed past, like, who the hell are you? So, because he explained to me, he goes, I saw you come out. I had like a green plaid jacket on. And he goes, who is this delusional young man? He goes, this kid is going to bomb. His wife was like almost telling him like not to put me out there. And so it worked. And so that show did well. And there was a guy running like, matter of fact, it ended up being me against Alonzo Bowden for the final grand prize. That's how I met Alonzo. And so there was a guy, a segment producer there for them, running the cameras and doing stuff. And I was getting along with him really well and just goofing around. And he ended up pitching a show to VH1. And he ended up getting the show. And then he brought me into audition. And I don't think the people at VH1 wanted me that much, but they let him make the call. So that's how I got the show. And so those are the big three things that spidered out for me. Each one kind of came from existing in the other ecosystem every time you get somewhere. And then from there, you get into the bigger clubs, and then Comedy Magic Club saw me, and then you just kind of get out there. So that's kind of how, for me, everything just kind of built on the thing I did before. And then after about 10 years, I would say 10 or 12 years, I hit a roadblock with doing a character on comedy because it got me where I was, but people would hire me to host. And when they saw my stand-up, it was a disconnect. And people would see my stand-up and couldn't see that I could do anything else. And I thought, well, I need to be me. I want people to see me and go, that's a great stand-up comedian. And I bet he would make a great host, too. So I ditched the character. And I did it on the fly. It was the most brutal experience I've been through. Just suddenly not doing it. Suddenly trying to only do jokes that I thought I could do that were me. Writing a ton of new material. I'd call clubs and say, look, I don't want a headline. Can I just come through and feature twice a year instead under the radar? I need the stage time. So I'd go places and they would see me do this version of my act and they go, but Saturday night you're going to do your real act, right? No, I didn't. So the good news is I was able to hold terrain. I didn't lose bookings because of it, but I had a couple questionable appearances where people were like, it's not what we paid for. And I go, it's cooking in the oven, baby. It's cooking in the oven.
What was this character that you talked about? What was the...
It was kind of an elevated idiot. It was just kind of a guy who thought he was an amazing at everything, but clearly wasn't. And dressed in a way that he thought looked fantastic, but clearly everything was just slightly off. But it was kind of my, I would call it elevated stupidity. It's my sense of humor I describe as smart stupid. That's what I like to do. Big fan of Mr. Steve Martin. I think he's right there. And so that's kind of what came out of it. Like I'd get on stage, one of my biggest jokes was I would claim to have this amazing power over women. And one of my big jokes at the time was, when I make love to a woman, and believe me, someday I will. So it was like that type of, and all my stories were just insanely stupid. We were like, but as a young man doing it, funny. Young guy, wearing old school clothes, thinking that he's the bomb of cross, everything, very funny. Aging into that character, creepy sad. I'm always conscious, like this is going to be, and my manager and I, we talked, you got about 10 years of this, and then you're going to be in a zone where people are going to be like, is he serious? Because when you're young, you get it. So that's when I decided I need to fuse the two parts of me so that I'm just being me on stage. And so it was weird because then I had to learn how to be me. My friend's been doing it for like the same time flying. I'm like, so how do you do this? What do you talk about?
It's a weird thing going from like goofy character work to just earnestly being yourself. It is definitely a step that some people have difficulty doing, and some people just naturally fall into themselves. Sometimes it's nice to be hidden behind the wall of that character. You don't have to actually be yourself.
The danger for me was that because I came across, if you got it and I did it right, you understood the joke and it was enjoyable. When I was starting to do it, if I didn't do it right, I just came off like an arrogant, entitled white guy. People looked at me because I looked that way, and they're just like, and when I bombed at this character, oh my God, did I bomb. Because if they don't buy who you are, and you're just going to be paying off something that nobody buys for minute after minute, the worst bombs I've had as that character, absolute agony. I mean, gut-wrenching agony. Bombing as me now cracks me up. The fact that I can be in that room and make people laugh, and yet, for some reason, it's not happening here. I mean, I hate it, but I'm still like, this is unbelievable to me. And that level of joy with my failure always helps me in that moment.
And I can empathize with the character being about when it bombs, and when they love it, because at Boston Duck Tours, we all think as characters. My character's a ukulele playing punk rocker whose claim to fame is I have the world record for longest musical tour to never sell a ticket. Like I'm playing up this very confident but sympathetically sad, tragic character. And if you want to be a part of that and that sadness, you're going to love it. But if you don't, 80 miserable minutes. And you know what? Throughout the tour, the character goes away and I come out to be me and I'm doing my jokes. I'm doing my sense of humor.
But you got to circle back.
You got to circle back. Yeah. And then every once in a while you come back and you're like, hey, you guys thought I forgot about puns? You know, or the little music references there. But if you are on board with that at the start of that engine of that duck boat, then you're gonna have a good time. And it's not good for me either. But if you're just like, okay, we're gonna get a show, and look, the knowledge is there, the history stuff is there. You're gonna get that history stuff, and you're gonna get a good couple jokes with it. You're gonna get a couple of bad jokes. You're gonna get a couple of bad jokes on purposely bad. And I'm gonna be here to have fun.
Well, you know what? And I felt for Charlie Chowderhead because when he started, I'm like, this is either, I don't know, they're kind of like punish, and then, but once he crossed the threshold now where we were enjoying it and we look forward to it, whether the joke was good or not, that's what I'm saying to myself. See, he did it. He just made this okay for everybody. And there's a couple great jokes in there that I looked at my son and I go, that is really funny. And I'm like, I'm happy. There's a couple moments I was like, yeah, really fun. So.
Yeah, I think I really shine when we're on the river and I'm doing the kids because it's all crowd work. And that is where the people are like, oh, this is where he really is. Yeah. This is the real guy making jokes, not the character stuff. Which, by the way, I do want to point out, I'm going to say you're welcome for the SiriusXM because do you know who who was the producer for that blue collar comedy channel on the launch of it?
Yeah.
Me. I was the engineer that launched that. We launched the Blue Collar Comedy Channel for SiriusXM backstage of the filming of the Blue Collar Comedy Tour in Washington, D.C.
Well, I will thank you because the biggest shock of my life was that I'm getting airplay on the Blue Collar Comedy Show, Blue Collar Comedy Radio. When they told me that I'm one of the most requested, they did a poll, and at one point I was the most requested comedy CD on SiriusXM. And Blue Collar Comedy Radio approached me. I did a special for them in Nashville at the Sirius stage there. And I was like, are you sure? Because I'm not. And they go, no, because you're likable and everybody enjoys your act and the jokes are there. And I was like, okay. So I was like, Blue Collar Comedy. I'm a known commodity in that circle. So I thank you. I thank everyone who listened to me and put that stuff out there because I was like, you can't go, here's my career arc. This is what I see. So when I hear comics tightly planned, I go, I'm a much more zen, mindful man. I believe, you need to step into the next moment, be present, and then watch what's happening too, because there's going to be some doors open and some things happening that you can't script. Like going into corporate stuff. I didn't say to myself, I need to be a corporate comedian because that's where the money is. Never came out of my mouth. I was starting in LA, living in Santa Monica, and I had lunch with a buddy of mine, college buddy. We're just catching up with each other. I'm doing stand-up comedy. He was an account executive for a company called Jack Morton Worldwide. Never heard of him. He said, well, they're a corporate entertainment company, the biggest one in the world. He said, we hire talent all the time. We can submit these reports and say, we found some talent. We think you should look at them. So he just sent in a report saying that he found me, thought they should look at me, did not disclose that we knew each other. So then...
Oh, he found you years ago.
He found me drunk under his bed in the dorm. He found me face down by the Charles River one night. And so he sends a report into them, and then their San Francisco office reached out to me to audition for a trade show. So I went, and I did it, and I got the gig. After I got the gig, we both went and we explained that we knew each other, but I got the gig on my own merit, which was great. So then I did this trade show for them, and then from there, we got to know each other, and then they thought, you may be really great hosting these events, because I had done some hosting for this mobile disc jockey company before, they had me host this gig like as a Max Headroom style character, but I could live interact with the crowd. And I was really good. That's where I excelled because I'm quick off the top of my head, handle it. And so I did that for a couple of times. And then a company hired me and said, well, could you host it as yourself? And I'd never been asked to host before as myself. So I did that. So I had some videotape of me in a tuxedo hosting an awards banquet. So I was able to. So then the San Francisco office started pitching me for gigs. And then Jack Morton has a national talent register. And so the National Talent Register found me. And I became a low price point host. If you didn't have a big budget, this guy's really good and he can do the job for you. So I slotted in, but still low corporate money is good. So that grew simultaneously with my stand-up career. I was growing this corporate hosting arm while I was becoming a stand-up. So it all just happened organically. And then, and I still do both because, pays good, it's fun,
Well, I don't think of you as a clean comic, but I know you're not a dirty comic.
I think that's a great way to just, yes, that's
comedy?
a great description to me.
Yeah.
I'm not
was that always like the road? Like, were you consciously aware of it, or was that just naturally you were not? Dirty?
I am naturally leaning toward a cleaner side because I think I'm just conscious of everyone. I want to include everyone when I talk. I want everyone to understand me. But I will swear as needed, and I will write the joke as needed. But I always like to find, I'm a wordsmith. I prefer to find words that will get everybody in. I like to say it without saying it or create a way that you know what I'm talking about. So I would never describe myself as clean, but I can easily work a clean show because I'm very conscious of my surroundings. But I think your description is great. I'm not clean, but I'm not dirty either. I lean towards the cleaner side because that's how I write. I write with the idea that I can have all this be played to the widest possible audience. But I just write what I think, and I take it on stage. Sometimes the initial version of it is pretty, raw. And then I go, well, what if I said it this way instead, still make the same point, and I get more people on board? So that's how some rewrites happen.
See, and that goes back to me talking about how your self-awareness, because there's so many comedians who would never have gotten the opportunities that you earned on your own because their material isn't for that broad of an audience, or because they don't want to be part of that broad audience. So they shun that stuff, or they get the door slammed. They slam the doors in their own faces. They're cutting their noses to spite their faces to use it all.
There's a lot of cliches you dropped in that sentence. There's a lot of cliche, a lot of doors slamming and noses being cut. And, just give me, at the end of the day, what we got to do is,
just get rid of noses.
People ask me, it's the way I was raised. It's Marine Corps experience, understanding the restrictions of the world I'm in and trying to find the freedom inside of it. So I look around, I read the room well, and I don't just, I still do me. But if someone said, to me, it's like this. If I walk into a room, I call it the MacGyver approach. If you walk into a room and I go, you know what I need here? I need a drill, I need a hammer, I need a screwdriver, and I need a chainsaw. They go, well, guess what you have? A fork, a knife, a spoon, and duct tape. And I'm like, game on. To me, just then you lean into it. You don't go, oh, well, I'm really a screwdriver comedian. I go, well, you got duct tape. So my attitude is work with the tools you have and surprise yourself. And then you're going to push yourself creatively. And also, you'd be surprised what you can get away with sometimes. I've been told you can't do this, and I do it immediately to relax myself. I've done shows where, corporate show, tons of people. And they said, whatever you do, do not talk to the president. Do not talk to him. We do not want him to be made fun of. And I go, well, did that come from him? Well, and so I walk in the room and he's smiling and sitting there. And I just didn't want to deal with it. So I just said, I understand the president of the company's here. And he just looked at me and he raised his hand. And I went, thought you'd be taller. And place went nuts. He went nuts. And I left him alone, but I'm like, you can't put that in front of me and not have me address something. So, you gotta say something.
Oh, yeah, sometimes, it's addressing the awkwardness in the room.
It's my awkwardness.
Wins you over. It's a need.
Yeah. They were fine. I'm just like, My favorite was I did a show in San Francisco, and there was an Indian president of Hugh, Mr. Ratan Tata, one of the 5 most powerful, wealthy men in the world. It's like a god in India. and I was doing the show for an Indian company, but it was here in America. It's the Hotel Del, and he was going to be there for the first time, and the Indian everyone was like, Mr. Tata was nervous as hell. What it's the bomb and why? And everything. Well, the Indian culture is very hierarchy, and this guy's like untouchable. So he's in the front row, and I'm looking at him, and I walk in the room, and again, they Mr. Tata, blah blah blah. I walk in, and I said, "Well, Mr. Tata, it's good to see you." And I said, "You know what? You look like the Indian most interesting man in the world to me." And absolute silence, and the executives behind him were just staring. And then Mr. Tata was like, "Bah!" And he laughs, and then the executives laughed. And then I did 5 minutes on what cowards they were, that they waited for Mr. Tata to laugh. And then the Americans laughed. So we had this great moment. And so later that night, afterwards, they had this cocktail reception, and I'm hanging out with the production crew, and I go to get a drink at the bar. And some guy comes up to me and goes, "Mr. Tata would love to speak with you." And I look over, Mr. Tata's by himself at a table. No one's around him. His handler brought me over. We sat down. We had a nice chat, great guy. I walk back to the table, to the production company. Everybody's like, and I went down, I go, "Did you just see what happened? Did you just see that Mr. Tata personally invited me over to his table?" And I look at him and I go, "I am pretty confident I could have you all killed right now." I was just like, I'm in with the man. I said, "I understand the way this works. You're all dead. Everybody's dead to me." So
So we are pandemic friends, as I like to put it. I, get to meet a lot of my, I've met a lot of my pandemic comedy friends in person. We still have yet to confirm visually in person that we both have legs. Hopefully this winter when I'm back in LA, we'll be able to hang out. But for you, transitioning from and by the way, I want to commend you for diving into Zoom comedy, and we talked about it earlier, and I want to commend you for being a person that was like, all in. Because so many people...
Dude, my buddy Don Freeze and I talked about it. The minute it happened, we go, this is a permanent shift. We need to go all in. We talked about buying, I got an HD camera. I got the light here. I got the USB microphone. I got the pop-up green screen. I went all in. My first Zoom show was ridiculous. I was doing characters and pulling props, and it was just a cacophony of crap. And until I realized what I do best is I just stare into the camera and do it. People always said to me during Zoom, the number one compliment was, you really come through the camera. You really made it enjoyable. But my first one was so bad. So I was just like, I'm a pro. I have a career. I had a lab coat. I did so much weird stuff. And Friesen was even worse. He was frenetically doing like a one-man Sid Caesar. And it was just, we look back now, we go, yeah, it's a bit much. We thought we had to be like, Uncle Milty, TV's been born. And yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, all I did to prep my podcast studio into a Zoom comedy studio is I took my desk that faced that way and I turned it here. So all the cool shit that I used to look at to inspire me is now behind me. So everyone's like,
but you see, that's the thing is what you did was simple and it gave you instant credibility. Because when I saw you, I don't know who this guy is, but clearly he's done this before. Before you even opened your mouth and I realized that you didn't know what you were doing. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. I spent 20 years in radio making jokes to people in a room by myself.
So I look at you and
difference.
It said, this guy knows what he's doing. So I was like, I need to frame the shot. I had stuff on the wall. I had lights. I made sure that, so I went all in and then people paid me. People were like, hey, we have these Zoom meetings. Can you show up at the end to do 15 minutes or 10 minutes for $300? I'm like, yes, I can. And I do it. And look at my son, I go, Daddy made some money today, baby. And then you get paid and you're just like, it's how I survived too with unemployment and making some money coming in. But the fact that I could do it in my living room was crazy. It's just crazy.
And I miss those days a little bit, but I'm glad to be back in person. But I will say for me, and I'm curious if you had this problem, I actually had a little bit of a trouble retransitioning back into person because I got so used to this environment, that going back in front of people, I was offset. I wasn't as present with my material. I'm doing the same material that I wrote through the pandemic or before the pandemic, but there was so much matter of being back in my head, of trying to remember material and not being present in the moment where the beer was at. Did you have any problems going back, transitioning back into in-person comedy?
I wouldn't call them problems, but I definitely had an adjustment period. I realized that some of the jokes that sounded like they killed on Zoom was because, if you're doing a show for 200 people and 4 people lose their shit laughing, it fills your ear with laughter and the rhythm. And then I would do them live and realize, oh, that line, it's not that good. Or this bit needs more. So what I learned was that the material that I wrote during the pandemic was not translatable to live. I had to zhuzh it up a little bit. I had to get rid of some things that I thought worked. I had to add some stuff. Some concepts maybe resonated more on a Zoom show, but at a live show, not so much. So that part was like, oh, okay. But getting back live, I mean, I just felt good. A couple shows I felt back in rhythm. I didn't have to wait several seconds. Zoom shows helped me, though. It slowed me down on stage because I had to slow down for the Zoom echo. And I took that on stage and I go, I am more paced. It's a better show. I'm taking my time. I notoriously go too fast when I get excited. And so the Zoom reminded me just to rock it back so you don't overstep on the laugh. And I use that, take that live. It helped me with my rhythm a little bit.
And now what is current post-pandemic? I mean, we're 3 years past the pandemic. LA's reopened. What's comedy like? Is there a change between JP Connolly's comedy now and prior to the pandemic? Is there a difference in the career?
Well, I'm way more open. I think the material I'm writing is way more me. I wrote in the pandemic because I was going through a divorce and I was getting sober, so my material was way more raw. And I think I've maintained that, which is good. I went to show somewhere and somebody came up to me and said, you know what, I really love your material. This is way more you. And I'm like, then I'm doing it right. So I love the version of me out of the pandemic. The career is, I guess I'm at a place now where I got to make some choices about what's important to me, what I think I can do at my age and my disposition in the comedy community. No one is clamoring for a 57-year-old comedian who's got some skills, but I'm not hot, popular, don't have the large following. So I have to make some just choices of how I'm going to do this going forward. But, the good news is that bookings come and people still want a comic who can deliver, and I still love doing it. And I remember when I got to LA, I met comics in their 50s who were bitter at open mics, and I was like, if that's me, man, someone just put me out of my misery. So I'm happy to say that I've never enjoyed it more than I do now. I've never enjoyed writing more than I do now. I never enjoyed the detail that I put into it more than I do now. So the downside is, the clubs are not going to be as... I still have connection to enough clubs to keep me going, and I just want to find the next layer to add. My career's always had levels and layers. I'm just looking for the next one right now. Just something to make me excited, too. But I still love doing it. Still love getting the call. Still love hosting because there's all the new material. Write stuff. I love corporate hosting because they trust me, and I have budgets. I have ideas. I was trying to bring in a live hawk, and they're like... And you know what?
Still going back.
Do you know what their reaction to me was? Well, let's make some calls. And I'm like, I can't do this in a comedy club. I pitched the idea of a hawk terrorizing the audience, and they looked at me and they go, well, let's make some calls. I go, this is why I love the corporate gigs, because when you've done it by the third year in, they're just like, James, do what you do. And I go, I got an idea. And so, it's chainsaws and hawks. And they listen to me, and I pitch the idea. And the fact that they're looking at me like, well, that's actually kind of funny. I'm like, come on, guys, sign a liability waiver. So that brings me joy. I'm still trying to get the live hawk for this next year. They're booking me next year. And I'm going to come back and go, we didn't do it last time. Hear me out. Falcon Terror.
Look, I've made friends with a falconer. He'll do it for.
I think I can do it myself. Just give me the falcon.
Pay for the glove. I'll bring my own falcon.
I remember pitching the story, and someone's like, "Well, we're afraid that someone might be really scared." I'm like, "That's the beauty of it. Is that 80% are laughing, 15% scared, 5 terrified out of their mind, and they go and they say, well, what if it poops?" I go, "Unforgettable moment."
That's called good luck,
I'm just
remember?
Like, as a comedian, I'm going, it would make my day if that falcon dropped a bomb on a high-end dinner. I would be like, the greatest day of my life. So I don't see the problems they see.
And now with doing comedy and being a Marine, I've been wondering this whole time, have you actually ever done a USO tour?
You know, I was fortunate that at the Boston Comedy Festival, somebody approached me who was there, and he was booking the tours. And I got to do tons of them overseas during the Iraq and Afghanistan war. Been to Iraq several times, Afghanistan several times, been to Kosovo and Bosnia-Herzegovina, European tours. I've done a lot. It meant a lot to me. First time I went back, I did a show, landed in Kuwait, and I had been in Kuwait since Desert Storm. And just flying to Kuwait, I was just anxiety ridden. Last time I was there. So I remember I landed in the Kuwait airport, and I'm going through security with the other comics, and they're checking everybody's, and they ask, one by one, they're asking us, is this your first time in Kuwait? Is this your first time in Kuwait? And they get to me, and I said, is this your first time in Kuwait? And then I said, for non-liberation purposes, yes. and the tour manager looked at me, and I'm like, yes, this is my first time in Kuwait. So it's really, for me, it's great because, the shows are fun, but for me, it really is about being able to talk to the men and women afterwards and let them know that, dude, I walked in your shoes, I've been in your boots, I've been in this place before, I understand what you're going through. So the comedy's fun, but it was just, and, I never thought I'd get to spend time again in that environment and not have to be manly. It's kind of nice to, trip over your back and go, I'm a comic, it's fine, it's fine. Nobody's looking at me to go, pick up a gun. No, I'm fine. So
excellent. Well, it's been great catching up, James, and it's nice. That's one of the things about the pandemic that I made friends with people is and now you went through a real war, and I'm not going to try and diminish that, but when I say what I'm about to say is us comedians who really dived into the Zoom comedy during the pandemic, we went through something together. When I meet other comedians finding face to face, it's we know each other. We truly know each other, but we don't know our stories. We don't know where we started. We don't know, like you said earlier, the origin story, but we know each other. Yeah. We have that familiarity, and it's lovely hearing where you started and how you got from just a kid in San Diego, to being the comedian you are today, and in the between going to war and excuse me, what? We're going where? And then,
I'm not a psychic. It's not our problem. We're good to go, guys. Yeah, I've been wrong on a few things in my life. That was one of them.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad that we got to catch up on this time there. And hopefully when I'm in LA this winter during the off season for Boston Duck Tours, we'll get to hang out, have lunch, and hang out on the beach together.
Yeah, and if I come out to Boston at least once a year, I host a show for my buddy at Harvard every year. So if I'm out duck tour way, this time I'll find you. No offense, Charlie Chowderhead. I'll find the punk rock ukulele playing guy instead.
Awesome. This is great, James.
Hi, man.